Name something that gets passed around.
A joint.
A joint?
Now, streaming live on the Marijuana Agenda.
Oh, really? What are you people? On dope?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio.
Hey, this is great, man.
The voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Marijuana is listed as a Schedule 1 drug. That is absurd.
Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ. That's 650-534-2565.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
Hey, man. Am I driving okay?
Toker Talk Radio is your chance to make your voice heard in the Marijuana Nation.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listen to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
Send that message with clarity that good people don't smoke marijuana.
Now let's get to Toking and Talking with your host, Russ Belville.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Time for Toker Talk Radio. So glad to have you here joining us in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, where we're back to 55 degrees and cloudy and wet and rainy and hailstorms. Past couple of days, we've had hailstorms. For God's sake. Fortunately, weed is legal here, so, we can cope. We'll find a way to deal with it. Hey, regarding that last rant, too, great comments in the chat room. John Thomas hits the nail on the head when he says, marijuana prohibition is a fraud and an absurdity. As it crumbles, the resistant pockets will display that absurdity in various bizarre ways. Yes, absolutely. And also in the chat, we've got folks saying the bureaucrats wrote the prohibition laws so well that I'll take legalization in whatever form. And another writes, you thought pot laws were crazy under prohibition. Wait till bureaucrats get to it. Yeah, there is that consideration we have to live with. Of course, I hope it's clear that I'll support anything that moves the needle any small direction toward legalization. It's important that we remember legalization is not an endpoint so much as it is a journey. I mean, the end point is freedom. The end point is no control by government over marijuana, aside from making sure it's not poisonous to people, that it's inspected and such, and that we try to keep it out of the hands of kids. But even kids getting a hold of it shouldn't be a criminal thing. Shouldn't be something we're locking people up over, right? We should leave. I really believe in a broader sense, when we start talking about criminal justice, that we should reserve caging human beings for those human beings who have proven themselves to be harmful to other human beings, right? And I mean harmful in such a way that them not being caged will lead to imminent harm, right? Physical harm. We're talking rapists, murderers, child molesters, arsonists, people that are out there causing harm. Let's lock them up. Let's separate them from society. They're causing problems, right? But aside from that, I think we really need to explore better alternatives to sentencing people to be in cages. And in that, of course, I would include lots of things that I would decriminalize, regulate, even legalize. Not just marijuana, but all drugs. And I know that freaks some people out. They're like, oh my God, no, you'd legalize PCP? You could legalize meth? You'd legalize cocaine? Yes, I'd legalize them all. I don't believe government has any right to try to stop someone from doing something to their body, even if it's harmful to their body, so long as they're not harming others, or it can be shown that their use is an imminent harm, is definitely going to cause imminent harm to someone, right? If they come up with a drug that you can guarantee someone takes it, they go into a mad rage and start biting people's face off. All right, you got a case for imminent harm. Can't make that case for acid and mushrooms and ecstasy and marijuana and most of the drugs out there that people enjoy taking. You really can't make the case of imminent harm to others. Now, you can make the case of imminent harm to self. Sure. Oh, yeah. Lots of drugs are harmful to yourself, but we're not a free society if we stop people from doing harmful things to themselves. If we require, through force of law, people to only be good and pure, That's a slippery slope we don't want to go down. And so it's not just drugs. Now, I would have increasing levels of regulation based on the harms of the drug, sure. Just like we do for alcohol, right? We got states where, 3-2 beer is a difference from shots is a difference from, high proof alcohol. We have places where you can get beers in the store, like here in Oregon, you can get beer and wine in the store, but for the hard alcohol, you got to go to the liquor store. That's fine. We can have a spectrum of regulations. I think all drugs should be legal, but all drugs is legal from chocolate to morphine, as Peter McWilliams once said. I think it was Peter McWilliams. Terrence McKenna, maybe? Anyway, all drugs should be legal. Just how legal should they be is really the question. Nobody deserves a cage or punishment by the state for what they do to themselves. If what they do to themselves is so harmful, that's the punishment right there. Why would you want to have a law that punishes someone for being punished, for punishing themselves, for harming themselves? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And of course, I'd throw a whole lot of other things in there too. Most of what we call sex crimes aren't crimes. Two people want to have sex, and one wants to pay the other for it. So long as the person receiving the money isn't coerced or forced or under threats, I don't see anything wrong with that either. It'd be a whole lot better if it were regulated, inspected, tested, and safe.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb and licensed by the City of Portland.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. Supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaman Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for the Marijuana Policy Insider with Marijuana Policy Project. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Russ? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Sounds like a skunk. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
Welcome back, everybody, as we continue our look at the growing movement to legalize marijuana across this country. We do run into some absurdities, resistant pockets of absurdity, to quote John Thomas from our chat room. And one of the absurdities has to do with the federal and state conflict. States have legalized marijuana to some degree, and the feds say it's completely illegal. And since there's a lot of interplay between the feds and the states, this can lead to all sorts of absurd problems. And one of these is happening up in the state of Alaska. Now, the state of Alaska, their agriculture department, has this branding campaign. A lot of states have this, farm states, where they have the appellation of their state. They brand their agricultural products as grown in that state, right? Idaho potatoes, you can think of as a prime example. Georgia peaches, right? Something that just stands out to the state. And while we don't think of agriculture in Alaska very often, they've got some of this too. And so they have a program called Alaska Grown. And there's this label you can get, Alaska Grown, shows your crop is grown in Alaska. Sell that and promote that however you like. So a couple of the local pot farmers in Alaska, commercial marijuana growers, applied for this Alaska Grown label. And as one of them says, Tara Bass, she's the owner of the Remedy Shop in Skagway. She says, quote, "It's one of the only crops that is grown here and sold here and stays here," right? So they got seed to sale tracking in the Alaskan program up there, in Alaskan marijuana legalization. So every cannabis plant gets a bar tag. It's tracked from the moment it goes into the soil to the moment it is sold. If anything could qualify as being Alaska grown, here's something you can guarantee was Alaska grown. We got the paperwork and the cameras, right? This was Alaska grown. But the Market Access and Food Safety Manager of the Division of Agriculture, a woman named Johanna Herron, says the applications are on hold and they're not likely to be approved soon, apparently. Quote from Herron is, "We receive so many federal funds, we wouldn't want to jeopardize those." So it's once again, it's that federal-state conflict, right? Alaska Department of Agriculture might be getting some sort of federal funds in the form of grants, these state grants that they get, or some sort of aid. Who knows what it is? But because of that, oh no, we can't put Alaska Grown on marijuana that was grown in Alaska legally as voted on by the people of Alaska. Can't put that label on it. Might jeopardize our funds. And you get all sorts of examples of this in the states that have legalized marijuana. But when we talk about Alaska, they got all sorts of special problems that the rest of the states don't have. Number one, just getting into Alaska, right, is crossing a border or crossing or taking an airplane, right? You drive across the border through Canada, but now you're crossing two borders, from U.S. into Canada, then Canada into the U.S., back into Alaska. Border crossings are fraught with all sorts of difficulties when we're talking about marijuana, people that use it, and especially those that are the cannabis industry. You get that question from the customs, have you ever used marijuana? And a honest answer to that could mean not getting across the border, ever. So that's one problem right there. And how weird is that going to be when we're talking about people who live in Washington State, where marijuana is legal, who might want to drive up the British Columbia coast, where by 2018 it's going to be legal, and make their way into Alaska on the Pacific coast, where it's legal, but they'll have two border stops in between there, where either where the U.S. government could put a stop to them because on that imaginary line, it's not legal. Crazy. And this really affects Alaska in another way because of it's so huge, such a huge state and so rural. There's many locations in Alaska you can't get to by driving a car. Only way in is one of them planes. And talking one of them little puddle jumper planes, once you get into airspace, now you're subject to the FAA's jurisdiction. Now, so you're a cannabis producer in the southern regions of the state, and you're trying to get your product to some other location. Can't take it by plane and put that on your manifest and go through the FAA and all of that. Then there's the case of what they call in Alaska the highway system there, which is the maritime highway system. You think of Alaska on that coast, especially, Anchorage, Skagway, Juneau, all of those places. Lots and lots of islands, going all the way out west toward the date line on in the Aleutian Islands. Think of all these islands. And so Alaska has what's called the Marine Highway System. It's a ferry system that goes through from island to island, place to place, but it gets federal funds. And it is going through federal waterways in some cases. So they can't have the major cannabis producers taking pounds and pounds and pounds of weed on the system. Now, the ferry system has been pretty lenient when it comes to personal possession. You got less than an ounce, they're not going to bug you. But you get more than an ounce, they're going to turn you over to authorities. And of course, pounds and pounds and pounds, yeah, they're going to turn you over. So we've got this imbalance between the federal and the state laws, and so many places where federal law or federal money impacts the intrastate travel inside the state itself because of the highway funds, because of the grants to the agriculture department, whatever else it might be. And then another consideration a lot of people don't think of is our border patrol. I mentioned the borders, going across the Canadian border to get into Alaska and into Canada and so forth. But also think about our border patrol. The United States Border Patrol has the legal authority to patrol within 100 miles of the U.S. border. Maybe it's 150. I think maybe they upped it recently, but last I recall telling this, it was 100 miles of the U.S. border. And that includes not just the Canadian border and the Mexican border and the Canadian border with Alaska, right? It also includes water borders, our borders with the seas and lakes, right? So that part around the Great Lakes, 100 miles around the Great Lakes, because, Canadian border and such, but also the Pacific Ocean, within 100 miles of the Pacific, within 100 miles of the Atlantic, and within 100 miles of the Gulf of Mexico. So just think of America with a 100-mile belt around it. And that's where the Border Patrol is allowed to act. Federal authorities, federal cops allowed to act within the borders of the states. And when we're talking about this 100-mile band that goes across America, 90%, I believe. It's like 90 some odd percent of the American population. No, wait, get my stat right. Nope. It's 2/3 of the population lives within that 100-mile zone. And 9 of the top 10 cities in America are within that 100-mile zone. And there's something like 11 states that are fully within that 100-mile zone, like Hawaii, completely within the zone. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, these kind of states, completely within the 100-mile zone. So we have states where the Border Patrol has jurisdiction to mess with people throughout the entire state. And what I mean by messing with is checkpoints, where states might not allow a checkpoint. In a lot of states, like home state of Oregon here, it's against the state's constitution to put up a DUI checkpoint or any sort of, suspicionless checkpoint to harass drivers. Not for the Border Patrol, though. They're within 100 miles of the Pacific Ocean, which is Interstate 5. They could go ahead and put up checkpoints if they wanted to. They don't need much as far as suspicion goes. They're allowed to conduct warrantless searches in violation of our Fourth Amendment, the Border Patrol are. So that's within 100 miles of every border. So add that to the federal-state conflict, where federal cops can be messing with us and really mess up our lives 100 miles away from the border. And why is that? Right? They're the Border Patrol. They're supposed to be patrolling the border. Well, this series of decisions have allowed that, but once the bad guys get across the border, they're going to make their way away from the border. And so we have to have a zone in which they could still apprehend the guys that have just crossed the border. Really? Sounds to me like that just incentivizes people who've illegally crossed to go further into the middle of America. Get as far away from the 100 miles as they can, right? But really, it just empowers our cops in a way they're not meant to be empowered. Just like the no-knock, the suspicionless warrants that were supposedly for terrorism.
facts on the television. I keep falling off.
All right, that sound means that it's 4:20 here in the Pacific Time Zone. And according to our union rules, we got to take a safety meeting right now. I sure hope you're safe out there. And when we return, we'll talk more about what's happening in the world of weed right here on Toker Talk Radio.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the Northwest Cannabis Chronicle from the Marijuana Business Association. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Most of us pirates, we go on vacation to North Dakota, you know, because they've got a town called Argusville. Arr. What are you smoking there, boy?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back. And before we get back to the marijuana news, I've got to touch on the Maine news that's going on. Not the state of Maine, like the Maine story that's happening right now with Trump, Comey, and Russia. And I'm not going to stay there very long, but it's just amazing that, you know, Trump is able to completely blow away all the excuses his White House people had been using for his firing of Comey, and then goes ahead and admits he fires the FBI director because he didn't want him investigating Russia. And then Comey now, the news story today is that Comey has come back out and said he's got memos of his transcriptions of his conversations with Trump telling him to go easy or to make the Flynn investigation go away. So evidence. This would be called evidence of obstruction of justice in any other case. It's just phenomenally amazing to me where we're at in our American politics. And part of this that's so amazing is just how craven and how beholden to power the Republicans are at this point. So willing to excuse and look the other way and just be ultimate hypocrites when it comes to what Trump is doing right now with classified intelligence. It was reported that Trump gave away some classified secrets, some intel, to the very Russian ambassador, Kislyak, that is at the center of all this Flynn and Russia stuff. Like Trump has 0.6 micrograms of a shit to give about the optics of any of this, right? Just blustering, blundering right on through it, doesn't even care, right? So all of this is happening, right? All of this amazing stuff, like the kind of stuff that Richard Nixon is rolling in his grave wondering, oh, where were these Republicans when I was in office? Oh, it's like, yeah, I apologize for the terrible Nixon impersonation, but still, I was a kid at the time. Give me a break. Anyway, I'm just amazed by this. I'm amazed by this whole thing because this is the same party that was like just destroying Hillary Clinton over, oh my God, she used a BlackBerry to try to use her email and that was insecure. And now we got the guy, leaking information to the Russians, doing classified secret stuff at Mar-a-Lago with a Chinese premier over a North Korean thing and missile launches into Syria. And it's just, wow, right? The sheer hypocrisy is just so stunning. You're waiting for someone's head to blow up like that guy in Scanners, right? So with all that, that's our context, right? I wanted to set the context for this tweet I came across because it involves my home state of Idaho and its Senator James Risch. Now, you got to remember James Risch. Now, this guy, when I was in Idaho, this guy used to be, I think he was the lieutenant governor of Idaho. He used to be a representative, House of Representatives, congressman from Idaho, and now he's a senator from Idaho. I believe he's the one that took the place of Larry Wide Stance Craig, who is not gay. He's not gay. Whatever you think, Larry Craig's not gay. He says so. Yeah. So anyway, Risch, the senator, I was seeing some tweets earlier today where people were saying, in the contest for who is the most pro-Trump apologist willing to condone anything, the award's got to go to Idaho Senator Jim Risch. And I didn't see the story and I didn't, follow up on it because I was busy getting the show ready. But then I just got this tweet that came across of Stephen Peoples at SP Peoples on Twitter. His tweet reads, Senator James Risch, Republican Idaho, says of Trump presidency, quote, I think it's getting better as time goes on, end quote. Incredulous Fox News anchor, quote, you do? End quote. So, yeah, not a surprise. And as I often say when I'm giving my speeches, I left Idaho in 2003 because I discovered you could. There are no walls, there are no guards, no gates, no moats, no sharks with freaking lasers on their head. You can get the fuck out of Idaho. And anybody who has the ability to do so, I highly recommend it. I know I do most things highly, but still, if you can get out of Idaho, please. My God, George Carlin has his old riff on people that ought to be locked up, and he talks about 4 states. We just wall off 4 states and put all the crazy people and the lunatics and the killers and all the bad people in those states. I nominate Idaho, and not all of Idaho. I suggest that we take from like Sun Valley north, and let's just turn that over to Washington State, right? Sun Valley North, Washington State can have it, but the rest of it, the southern Mountain Home, Buell, Bliss, Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Rexburg, Boise, Nampa, Meridian, Marsing, all that deserty, sagebrushy farmland, let's wall that off. Wall that off. That's our new prison colony. Put all the undesirables there. Don't let them vote. Who knows what we can solve? I'm being facetious, but Jesus, man. The Trump presidency is getting better as time goes on. Even if you were like a person who voted for Trump, how can you think that? Right? No, this is just, once again, the Republican Party has really devolved into a party of tax cuts for the rich. That's really their only motivating factor. How do we cut regulations and cut taxes for rich bastards? That's it. That's their only gig anymore. They give lip service to the pro-life thing, and they give some lip service to the Second Amendment thing. But if it really came down to it, it's the tax cuts and the regulations they would get rid of. The NRA stuff, the gun stuff, the abortion stuff, that's just red meat for the masses. They could care one way or another. And it's just amazing to me to watch how they are so willing to stand by Trump. They've got that. It's really like a criminal conspiracy, right? A friend of mine, attorney John Lucy, criminal defense lawyer, great guy, has a cap that he wears sometimes. And it says, nobody talks, everybody walks, right? That old code of honor, the whole code of silence for the family, right? That's what Republicans are like now. They're like a mob family. They're like a criminal family. We all support what the leader is doing. We never question him. We close ranks no matter what it is. There are no principles. You get guys like John McCain who says it would be a stupid idea. It'd be an idiotic idea to get rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court judges. But got to close ranks. Got to do what we got to do. It's just remarkable that this is happening and that we're living through it. And there's got to be a point at some point where Republicans have to decide whether they love this country or they just love power. And I believe some of them are fine with, Russian oligarchy and corporate control. They're, hey, whatever. As long as I have my gig, as long as I keep getting reelected. I think a lot of them are actually fine with it. Just frustrating as hell to watch. And on the other side, you got the one side that's just, the Republican side of corruption and addiction to power. And then on the other side, you got the internal circular firing squad on the left, where you can't be pure enough, you can't be good enough. Everybody has to toe the line on every particular issue. And a situation where, like, Democrats are going to have to understand that when it comes to being the party of rich bastards, the job is already taken. The rich bastards already have a party called the Republican Party. And since Bill Clinton, the Democratic Party, has decided, well, the reason the Republicans have been winning so much is because they're the party of rich bastards. If we could just find a way to get rich bastards to like us, we could win too. And the thing is, it worked. It worked to Bill Clinton's advantage. Now, it worked to his advantage more so because he was an incredibly gifted politician. I think if people knew getting into the Clinton presidency that he'd be, signing the crime bill and the Telco Decommunications Act and all the things that we're still working to repair today, I think a lot of people that voted for Bill Clinton may not have. Right? They got sold a bill of goods on that one in a lot of respects. Promised don't ask, don't tell would end, and promised that we'd have public health care, and then see where that went. So there's a discontent on the left because I feel just generally the biggest problem is that the system has become one that is run by money. Republicans are the party of money. Therefore, they can game and run the system. At least, I'm saying this is the mistake that the Democrats are making, is thinking that this is the way the system runs. It's a party of money, and we got to be pragmatic, and we got to raise money, and if we're not in power, we can't do anything, so we have to make compromises. And that makes sense. I mean, to some extent, politics is the art of the possible and all that. But you really got to know what your core is. And the core here, the Democrats have lost their core, which is in opposition to the party of money, Democrats were the party of the people. And their mistake is thinking the system is irreconcilably broken and beholden to money. It's only that way because they lost touch with the people. The system is really honestly, is geared to work for the people. If the people get out and vote, if the people are motivated to do so by having a party that stands for them, having leaders that are actually fighting against the power of money, the power of business, in order to support the people. I always think of it like an ecological system, right? Politics and the way our country works is like an ecological system or a family. Republicans are the daddy and Democrats are the mommy, right? You got the strict authoritarian over there, and then you got the nurturing parent over there. You got the tough on the used to be tough on the bills, let's not spend money, versus, hey, let's get the kids some braces and some immunizations side, right? A lot of that's changed, but generally that's the way I came up understanding how it worked. And these were not either of them in theory good or evil any more than night and day are good and evil, or male and female are good and evil. It's more that they're two sides, they're that yin yang, that balance that has to happen. You have to have a government that's in opposition to business to curb the excesses of business. You have to have a business community that's in opposition to government to curb the excesses of government. You have to have an enlightened people and a brave media to curb the excesses of both and hold them in check. That's the wisdom of our founding fathers, the idea of checks and balances, and not just the judicial, legislative, and executive, but the population and the media. And we're way out of balance. Fortunately, cannabis is good for balance, provides homeostasis, and jobs and tax revenue too. All right, we'll take a break, and Bernie Sanders is right. You know, you can raise a lot of money from a lot of people if you do it right.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact Normal at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the pharmaceutical agenda, without all the side effects, overdose deaths, insurance.
Side effects may include nausea, dry mouth, and constipation. Dry mouth, constipation, indigestion, and abdominal pain, which can occur without warning and may cause death.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for Police for Reform with Law Enforcement Action Partnership. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Pod 2.0. It's not your father's Woodstock weed.
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
Welcome back, everyone. 38 and a half after the hour. And if Idaho Senator Jim Risch didn't bowl you over with his uproarious comedy that the Trump administration is getting better and better, we've got the headliner in the conservative stand-up comedy circuit joining us now, Governor Mike Huckabee. Governor Huckabee's most recent tweet, I am quoting this verbatim, people. CNN quotes anonymous sources that @real Donald Trump had 3 scoops of ice cream and called it an ice cream comey. Have you followed Governor Huckabee's tweets at all? Have you heard about this? Just go Google Mike Huckabee comedy. And I'm sure somebody has probably cataloged this, but Huckabee is like the worst dad joke guy out there. You know, he thinks he's being funny with this stuff, and it's just painful. And not painful like liberal conservative, like I'm a liberal and I'm like, oh, that stupid conservative. No, I mean painful from like, I'm a fan of comedy, and this is just awful. And folks, I got my share of I take a lot of comedy from both sides, although I got to admit there's not as much comedy coming from the conservative side, but I appreciate conservatives joking at liberals' expense too. This is just bad comedy. It is just awful. Who let this guy in the room? Take it. It's not open mic night, Governor Huckabee. Give it a rest, man. Go back to, I guess you can't go back to writing the weight loss books, can you? Anyway, let's get back to marijuana because we're big fans. Really love the marijuana here at the show. And the latest news that's got me kind of interested in what's going on here comes out of the Sacramento Bee. And it's a story that I covered in the news segment in hour one. And it's that the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors last week voted unanimously for new restrictions on odorless butane. Okay, so what this is they've had, like lots of places have had BHO lab explosions, which they call them labs, but they're not labs. Some guy with a glass tube who stuffed a bunch of weed in it and put a some sort of like nylon or mesh screen on the end of it and took a can of butane and sprayed the butane into the tube, and the butane rushing through the tube strips off the THC, the trichomes of the plant material, which is caught by the mesh. But the resulting drip of butane and cannabis gets caught in some little glass pan, glass, Pyrex kind of thing. The butane evaporates off. You're left with cannabis concentrate. I'm not telling like any sort of tales out of school here. You can Google this. You can go to YouTube. There's plenty of videos to tell you how to blast butane hash oil. People do this, and on occasion they do it stupidly in an unventilated area, and butane is a heavier than air gas, so it sinks to the floor and it pools up, and it finds a spark. And that spark can be from a pilot light, it can be from static electricity, it can be from a lot of different sources. And they blow up a wall, they blow out a bathroom or an apartment or a hotel room, and it makes the news, and everybody's scared, and the people involved in the blast end up with third-degree burns, over 30 to 90% of their body. It's really awful because the gas kind of envelops them. And most people that get a burn of some sort, the burn is like near them, like it's at the direction of the fire. So they get a 5 or 10% burn from whatever direction the fire was coming from. These butane, like I said, the gas envelops them, and they can get burns over almost all their body. And for every percent of burn, they say, oh, he's got 15% burn or 18 or 20% burn. Every percent's like extra weeks in the hospital. So, for people that don't have insurance or whatever, they end up costing the state for every week they're there in the hospital in the burn ward, right? So what's happening now in Sacramento is the Board of Supervisors have crafted this regulation limiting how much butane people can have. And it began because of one of the councilmen. The guy's name is, let's see if I can find his name. Where is he at? Well, that was in the previous story. But anyway, one of the councilmen, Eric Guerra, I think is his name, went to a liquor store in the neighborhood and noticed that the liquor store had boxes and boxes and boxes of butane can refills. It's like, what the hell is a liquor store need with butane, right? You can see maybe if it were like a cigar store and they needed to refill butane lighters, for Zippos and stuff, but what's up with the butane at the liquor store? Well, of course, what it's for is the people that are blasting hash oil need large quantities of butane to do it for every blast you do, right? I used to live out in Northeast Portland, and within blocks of my house was one of those, bodega-style convenience stores where there's dust on the stuff on the shelves because it's hardly selling any of that, but stacks of boxes of butane, and that they, I'm sure, was keeping the store in business. So in Sacramento County, the supervisors voted unanimously for this new bill, this new ordinance, I should say, that limits a retailer to selling only 600 milliliters of butane to a customer. Now the cans, your standard butane refill can is a 300 milliliter. So 2 cans, pretty much limiting you to 2 cans of butane. If you are, if you want to buy some butane, 2 cans per customer. And in addition to this, have created a possession limit for butane in the county. You can only possess 200 or 600 milliliters, 2 cans worth of butane. Now, I was looking before the show, trying to find the text of the actual ordinance to find out what is the penalty, because I don't think, is there a criminal penalty involved in this? I don't know what's going on. I still will, I'll update that when I find out. But they're going to prohibit possession of more than 2 cans of butane. And what they're saying they're modeling this off of is meth. Yeah, they're modeling this after states that have gone after meth by limiting the precursor chemical pseudoephedrine. That's why here in the state of Oregon, you can't get good Sudafed. You can't get the real Sudafed that actually works, right? Because they've banned that. You have to have like a prescription to be able to get the Sudafed. You have to cross the river over into Washington to buy real Sudafed. Place like Oklahoma have these kind of laws as well. And, we can discuss whether or not it has made any effect. I mean, I can tell you what the effect of it has been is it's changed the way meth is made. That's all. It hasn't stopped people from making meth or getting any meth. It's actually led to the evolution of easier meth-making techniques, the one-pot method, they call it, where literally you can take a 2-liter bottle and put the chemicals and put the stuff in the 2-liter bottle in your backpack and shake it up and make your meth that way. So it's not as if it's not as if anything we do under prohibition eliminates the law of supply and demand. Okay. So it was modeled after this. We limit the meth precursor chemicals, the meth will go down. So let's limit the butane. We only have 2 cans of butane and that'll stop the explosions. No, it won't. When will they learn? When will they ever learn? First of all, you can buy 3 cans of butane on Amazon.com for like $20. So people are still going to get their butane. They're just not going to go to the local liquor store or the local convenience store and pay your local sales taxes that you get any benefit off of and have it being sold in places where you can keep track of how much it's being sold. No, they're going to order it on the internet, because the other thing they're doing in this ordinance is requiring the storekeepers to track the people that are purchasing the butane. Take down their information, their name, their address, how often they're coming in. Well, that's all that's going to do is push all those people buying the butane to the internet, to the sources out of the county that aren't going to be doing that kind of tracking. So we have once again, a law that's built out of a moral panic. Oh my God, the hash oil's blowing up places. Oh my God. Sacramento Bee, where I'm getting this story, their editorial board is urging the state to do this as a statewide prohibition on butane. And I'm telling you, this isn't going to have much of an effect. The demand for this product, the butane hash oil, is built on a lot of things. Number one, in the states that legalize it, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, California, the rest, when they legalize this stuff, they limit people to extremely low amounts, like 5 grams in some cases. They put all sorts of regulations and testing requirements on it so that by the time it hits the shelves, $25, $30, $50 grams of cannabis concentrate. Meanwhile, you have people that are home growing, other than Washington State, people that are home growing that are allowed to grow 3, 4, 6 cannabis plants, mature plants. From each plant, you can get ounces of marijuana. And most of these states, you're allowed to possess all that you harvest. But you're going to want the buds of the marijuana for smoking and vaping. And the rest of that stuff, the trim, the leaves and little popcorn buds and such, gee, what are you going to do with that? With a couple cans of butane, you can turn that swag, well, it's not swag, but you can turn that trim, the stuff that maybe you'd save for rolling joints with, you can turn that into stuff that they're selling for $20, $30, $50 a gram at the dispensary. And if you want to sell that on the underground market, you can just lower the price just a little bit, sell it for $10, $15, $20 a gram underground, and make a pretty good profit off of the trim and still have bud for yourself to smoke. And of course, the farther east you go, the more into prohibition land you go, that gram gets more and more expensive. I've heard of grams going for $100 in places like Chicago, Florida, New York. Until that sort of discrepancy in the price and the taxation goes away, nothing's going to stop people from home blasting their own cannabis concentrates. Nothing. The only thing you can do to make the number of explosions go down is reduce the cost and increase the access. How many stills are blowing up these days? It still happens. You still have moonshiners. But nothing like the number of stills that were blowing up in the 20s, the 1920s during Prohibition. It's the demand that's the danger. Not restricting the supply isn't going to solve that danger.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit MJBA.net for more details.
Georgia.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every Friday for the Reefer Rock Review with Herb Thrasher from 420radio.org. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Hello, Mr. Man. Hi. I'm working. I'm sorry. No food till this is done. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Just checking in on the chat room during the break, and John Thomas was mentioning how the blasting of cannabis oil is similar to how you can homebrew beer and wine. You can't distill hard liquor in your home. I'm not sure if I'm getting the context right on that, but anyway, let me address it. I think cultivating cannabis at home is like home brewing beer and wine, in that I'm producing something for my own personal use in a manner that cannot reasonably be thought to be imminently harmful to anybody else. At least as far as I know. Is there anything in home brewing beer that could explode or cause poison gas or anything like that? I don't think so. Or wine? I don't think so. And same with cannabis. Other than, eating the fertilizer or whatever, there's nothing about growing it that's going to cause imminent harm. But I think making dabs, making concentrates with explosive gases is more akin to distillation, more akin to building a still. Because in building a still, you can have an explosion that could cause imminent harm to others. I think it's more like that. Now, the law doesn't allow you to distill alcohol at home, at least as far as I know in most states. However, I would be all right with people distilling their own alcohol at home. So long as it's regulated and people are educated and licensed, I think that's fine. And I think we should have a similar level for butane hash oil. I think there is some reasonable level at which the state should be involved here. But I think it should be legal. Here in Oregon, it's illegal. It's illegal in, I think, all the states that have legalized to home blast your own butane hash oil or propane or hexane, any of the anes. And I understand wanting to restrict that because of its explosive nature, but I think there is a medium in between this. I think there's a level we can negotiate, which would be allow people to have home processor licenses just for their own personal use that show that they've been trained and educated on the basics of it, that they're not going to be doing it in an unventilated area, that they know what they're up to, they know what they're doing. I think that's reasonable because we allow hunting, right? Like, we allow the state, like, hunting is legal. You can go out into the woods and shoot critters for fun and food. It's okay. Although here in Oregon, especially out here on the west side of Oregon, we got a lot of much more liberal types that would be against hunting. But let's forego that argument for now and just talk about the fact that it is legal to hunt in the states. And the states, however, do not allow you to just go out anywhere, anytime you want and shoot whatever animal you want for fun and food. You got to have a hunting license. You got to pay the state. And that hunting license in some states requires some minimal level of competency. I know when I was a kid, I had to take a hunter education class. I don't know how strict it is anymore in any other states, but I know. And you can't just shoot any critter you want. A lot of these critters, you got lotteries for them. Elk tags and antelope tags and bear tags that you need to get. And the act of hunting is going out into public lands, into areas with a loaded weapon and firing it at critters that are far away from you. And we're trusting you to identify them correctly as critters and not fellow human beings. So that's something to me that I think has a pretty reasonable level of regulation. Maybe it could be stricter. I think maybe our access to guns and ammunition in this country could be a little stricter as far as the regulations go. Again, let's forego that argument. I don't want to go there for now. But we allow that. That's legal. We have hunting licenses that people have to get before they can hunt. Hunting's legal, but the state has some degree of controlling it because we got to protect the environment, the critters, and the people. So why couldn't we do that for home butane extraction? I mean, you could have a home blaster's license, right? And you've gone to the state mandated blaster class, learned the basics. Maybe even your blasting area has to be inspected by a state inspector. I mean, I just had to have an inspector come to look at my house for Airbnb, just to let people sleep in my guest rooms. I had to have an inspector come and verify the fire detector works and make sure that there's a carbon monoxide detector. I don't have a problem with that. It seemed reasonable. And I pay taxes on this Airbnb every time someone stays here. Some money goes to the city and the county. I think most people are cool with that. But I think a blanket ban on home butane oil blasting just drives it underground, just restricts.
Man, something that gets passed around.
That's interesting.
A joint.
A joint.
Now, streaming live on the Marijuana Agenda.
What are you people? On dope?
I guess we
It's
are.
time for Toker Talk Radio.
Hey, this is great, man.
The voice
Once again,
of the Marijuana Nation.
I didn't get my timings correct. I apologize for that interruption by Dan Michaels and the rest. Anyway, that's all the time we got for today because time flies when you legalize, especially when you can't do base 60 math in your head. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. Tomorrow's program, as part of our central rotation, will include the Minority Cannabis Report and the Southwest Cannabis Chronicle. And we're going to go way southwest.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter.
That's right,
Learn
way
more
southwest.
at MJAgenda.com.
All the way to the state of Hawaii for tomorrow's interview. We'll be talking with Brian Murphy. That's it, folks. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down. Hey!